Hey, Paul.
Hey, dude.
Are you ready for this Innovation Summit?
I'm really excited to see this go, man. Let's do it.
This would be great. And I think you're actually the best person to do with this. This is Paul Bunje, Dr. Paul Bunje. Dr. Paul Bunje is the co-founder of Conservation X Labs, and he did a few things even before that. He was chief scientist at X Prize. He worked on climate at UCLA, and most importantly, he's an evolutionary biologist.
The reason that's so important is because my good friend Alex Dehgan here, co-founder and CEO of Conservation X Labs, is also an evolutionary biologist and a lawyer, and he's lived probably 100 different amazing, interesting lives. But top of the heap, of course, is having started Conservation X Labs with me. Before this, he was the chief scientist at the U.S. Agency for International Development, putting science back in the heart of our federal government and development work. He founded the first national park in Afghanistan during the conflict there. Read all about it in his book, The Snow Leopard Project. He's done incredible things as well, but one of the things that are chief among them is always looking for ways of pushing the envelope in innovation to help protect our planet.
And the one thing I think, at least I realized was in building national parks was that merely building those national parks, even merely setting up the rules around environment and the laws around environment were insufficient if we didn't take the pressures off them. We also realized that there were some really incredible, important new tools in international development that had a place in helping us solve the problems in conservation.
And I think that's what we've realized when setting up Conservation X Labs. We recognize that as important as all of the work that happened in protecting areas and training people, all of that sort of conservation of the 20th century wasn't capitalizing on what we've got in the 21st century. We've got two amazing things. We've got technology, look at us now. We've also got the ability to reach brilliant geniuses anywhere on the planet. And if we can harness that genius in the crowd, we have a chance to solve some of the most wicked problems facing both human civilization and the planet itself. And it's those features that really animated starting Conservation X Labs.
And it is exactly that. It was your experience at X Prize, my work in helping create the Grand Challenges for Development program at USAID that led us to realize that this could be a really powerful tool for conservation. And it's not to say that conservation isn't filled with geniuses, right? There's a lot there. But the fact is, it is not enough genius that we need to actually solve these problems, that we really have to tap into planetary genius.
That's what we're looking at, is that, look, these problems, if we're really honest with ourselves, they're getting worse, and they're getting exponentially worse. Biodiversity loss, climate change, pollution, etc. But the problems are still not quite keeping up. They're linear in scope. And that's where capitalizing on these exponential tools, like the crowd, like technology, has really animated us. And that's what we ask ourselves. We at Conservation X Labs, we're committed to ending the 6th mass extinction, the only mass extinction caused by a single species, us. But on the flip side, we have the tools, and we have the exponential tools to 10x those solutions that can get us there with wicked problems such as the artisanal and small-scale mining challenge that we built this grand challenge around.
When we started this process, we started looking at, what were the grand challenges around water and biodiversity conservation. This was the task that was given to us by the Moore Foundation. And when we looked, we saw almost 100 different potential grand challenges, from thinking about wetlands to re-engineering cities, to re-engineering agriculture, to re-engineering protein itself. But artisanal scale mining really appealed to us because it was a really tough problem. And we felt that this was a place where innovation could help us make a difference. I had a chance about a year and a half ago to go down to the Amazon, to go to Madre de Dios, Peru, and go to this place called La Pampa, where 30,000 miners cleared 15,000 acres of forest in some of the most speciose habitat on Earth. 200-foot trees filled with jaguars, filled with primates, filled with unbelievable lianas, and many other species of frogs and insects that make up one of the most important biodiversity sites on our planet were cleared and turned into essentially a sandy beach and pockmarked with ponds that were contaminated with mercury.
When you look at a challenge like artisanal mining, you recognize that it both provides amazing livelihoods for many people, and it produces the resources that power our daily lives, our computers, our cars, our cell phones. These all require these kinds of minerals that are coming out of these areas, but they're leading to this kind of habitat destruction and pollution, including, like you said, mercury, the largest source of mercury pollution in the world. We needed to get at the heart of the problem. And at Conservation X Labs, we don't look at just the symptoms. Hey, how do you stop this kind of mining? Because the mining is important itself. It's producing a lot of good. But rather, what are the underlying drivers of that mining? And we built this challenge as a challenge to innovators around the world to think about what they could do to stop those drivers that are causing harm, but still providing lives and livelihoods to people that need it and the stuff that we every day use. How is it that you can we can power the future and power our daily lives without destroying the planet? That's what you can do with the Grand Challenge.
And with an incredible team of partners, we launched this challenge. And today, we're going to hear from some really impressive speakers. Really impressive.
It's just incredible.
And we're going to have a live Q&A session between the judges and the finalists. And tomorrow, we're going to announce our winners.
So stick with us. Can't wait to have you guys enjoy absolutely everything, learn as much as we have about this, and be inspired about how these innovators and how you can help change the world.
And next, we'll hear from Peter Schlosser. Peter Schlosser is the Vice President and Vice Provost of the Global Futures Laboratory, the Director of the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation, and the University Global Futures Professor at Arizona State University. His research focuses on the hydrosphere, primarily the circulation of water in the oceans and the use of groundwater, climate change, and the future of our planet under increasing pressure from human activities. He serves on numerous national and international scientific steering committees and advisory committees, including co-chair of the Earth League, chair of the steering group of the International Study of Arctic Change, and a member of the boards of the Sustaining Arctic Observing Network and the Sustainability Consortium. He is a member of the German National Academy of Science and fellow of the American Geophysical Union, fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and the Explorers Club. Please welcome Dr. Peter Schlosser.
Hi, my name is Peter Schlosser. I'm Vice President and Vice Provost of Global Futures at Arizona State University. I'm leading the Julie Ann Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory, and I'm Director of the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation. This session is about artisanal mining, but what I would like to do is to put artisanal mining into the larger context of the future of our planet, particularly planetary health. Because without a healthy planet, we really cannot create a future in which life and the systems that support it can thrive, and in which future generations can actually shape a life according to their needs. When we are looking at what has happened to the planet over the past few hundred years, we see that humankind has moved out of balance with the rest of the Earth systems. We have put pressures from many directions onto the planet by asking the planet to provide us with resources of many kinds to an extent that pushes the planet to its boundaries. In a way, we are asking the planet to give more than it has to offer. The signs of that are easily visible. For example, an increasing population of about 8 billion right now, since about 200 years plus, has extracted huge amounts of fossil fuels to provide the energy that society needs to function. That in turn led to the increase of carbon dioxide or CO2 in the atmosphere. And we all know what the effect of that is. It's called the greenhouse effect, and it leads to increased temperatures, to droughts. If you take that together, it increases the occurrence of wildfires. And if you're just looking at 2019 and 2020, we had tremendous fire activity from the Arctic through the west coast of the US, mainly California, through Brazil, and then it ended at the end of 2019 in a real inferno in Australia, where the fire was so intense that it burned about 1.5 to 2 billion animals, including 2/3 of the koala bear population. Coming back to Brazil and the fires. Of course, in Brazil, the fires have two reasons. One is related to climate change. The other one is related to the fact that people want to use the land, the forested land, for agriculture. So a lot of the fires are actually caused by intentionally burning the forest and then using the land for agriculture, typically exhausting the nutrients in a relatively short period of time, and then moving on to burning more forest so there is more land. This is a well-known feature, and there are many activities that try to halt the burning of the rainforest in the Amazon and put an end to this destruction of biodiversity and ecosystem services. What is much less known is artisanal mining. But artisanal mining also takes away big chunks of forest in the Amazon. It leaves behind barren land, often filled with ponds of water, and thereby also contributes to the destruction of one of the major ecosystems on our planet. What is more so, it's not just that we are losing forest, we are also leaving behind polluted land and polluted water. That leads to health effects and is a major problem for the population. So as we are looking at artisanal mining and the future, we have to be inventive, we have to be using all the knowledge and all the innovative power that we have as society to move towards a much more sustainable way of artisanal mining, meaning restoring the area that has been perturbed by the mining and restoring an ecosystem that is healthy and can thrive in the future. So it is actually great to see that the Conservation X Lab has this competition to help find solutions to a much more sustainable use of that forest. I wish all of you the best of luck in that competition.
Marianne Bailey is the Program Officer for Technical Assistance and Capacity Building at the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Prior to joining the Secretariat earlier this year, Marianne was the Deputy Director for Global Affairs and Policy at the United States Environmental Protection Agency. She was a U.S. negotiator for the Minamata Convention and has been involved in the United Nations Environment Program Global Mercury Partnership from its inception, including as its chair. Marianne worked in Mali with women's groups on agriculture and nutrition projects as a Peace Corps volunteer, for the Renewable Energy Institute, and for the U.S. House of Representatives. She holds a Master of Public Administration degree from Syracuse University's Maxwell School and a degree from Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service. Please welcome Marianne Bailey.
Hello to all the participants, judges, and viewers of the Artisanal Mining Grand Challenge. I would like to thank Conservation X Labs and all its partners for creating this challenge and for inviting me to play this small part of it. This challenge has brought you together to help transform the artisanal and small-scale mining sector throughout the world. Why does transforming ASM matter? Well, recent months have taught us many things, including the danger of taking ecosystems for granted and the danger of ignoring how vital they are for human health. This challenge shines a needed spotlight on deforestation, habitat loss, water pollution, and toxic exposures that can result from ASM done under the wrong conditions. At the same time, ASM is a tremendously important means of building wealth in mining communities. As one of the challenge vision statements says, innovations to improve the ASM sector mean better tools, better pay, and better lives for 100 million people that rely on income from artisanal and small-scale mining. This includes the approximately 40 million people directly earning their livelihoods from ASM. As you all know, the miners and their communities are hardworking, strong, creative, and very knowledgeable about markets. They are not seeking aid. What they need is for their vulnerabilities to be reduced so they can support their families safely and sustainably, and for the illegal actors to be held accountable. I spent a good part of my career working on policy solutions to the rampant use of mercury in artisanal and small-scale gold mining, or ASGM. Before the Minamata Convention on Mercury was negotiated, there were some amazing people and organizations working on improving ASM, including many of you participating here today. The experts knew artisanal gold mining was a big source of mercury emissions that polluted mining communities and nearby cities, and that circulated globally in the atmosphere. But it was only after many organizations and stakeholders came together that we found it to be the largest global source of mercury use and emissions. ASGM accounts for over a third of total global human-caused emissions of mercury, and the implications for human health are enormous. The Minamata Convention on Mercury is the first new multilateral environmental agreement in over a decade, and it was the first to explicitly address an informal sector of the economy. The International Labor Organization estimates that 90% of total employment in low-income countries is in informal sectors. The convention fits into global efforts to advance the transition from the informal to the formal economy and to advance sustainable development. In crafting the convention, negotiators recognized the vast income-generating aspect of the sector for over 15 million miners and their families. They did not want to prescribe rules that would not be followed or that would drive informal mining practices further from the reach of technical assistance solutions. So they created a flexible approach that requires countries impacted by ASGM to work to bring mining communities into formalized frameworks that allow the delivery of technical assistance and supply chain improvements, eliminate worst practices, address the needs and vulnerabilities of women and children, and foster the growth of site-specific solutions. And this is where all of you fit in. I am so inspired by the 11 finalists. Like the miners, you are hardworking, strong, creative, and very knowledgeable about markets, and you clearly have a passion for your work. Thank you for adding your ideas and talents to global efforts to protect the environment and human health and improve conditions for the world's artisanal and small-scale mining communities. When the world builds back better, let's make sure an improved ASM sector is a driver. Let's build back smarter. Let's build back with equity, health, and well-being as our guides. And let's all get on board with getting these tools out in the field and into the hands of those who can put them to use. Congratulations to all of you.
The last time I could get into La Pampa, this was a 200-foot high tree.
Oh, really?
With jaguars and monkeys and everything.
Oh, my God.
Oh, look at it.
Oh, my God.
We've arrived.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Welcome to the forest, my friends. This was a forest 3 years ago.
How long ago?
3 years ago. 3 years ago. This was high forest.
We hear about the fires, we hear about the agricultural deforestation that happens, but artisanal scaled mining is a much less known problem, which is part of the reason for the grand challenges. This is a wicked problem. It involves
complexities that are specific to the places that are where it's happening, whether it's happening in Madagascar, the Congo, or the Amazon.
We're right there at number 1. Today, we begin. This is open now. Woo! That's right, you're a part of this. October 2nd, applications are open. We've got now several months to innovate.
We've been taught that innovation is glamorous, that it's sexy, that it shows up and is this stroke of lightning. But we can't lose sight of all of the pieces that go into those moments. It's rough, it's real, it's hard. It means showing up and not giving up even when you want to.
My name is Itai Mutameri and I'm the founder of Baseline, and we are solving the problem of the lack of data in ASM.
We heard about the Artisanal Mining Challenge and decided to produce a public mapping platform for tracking mining in tropical forests.
So pleased to be here to present our submission.
So Matako is the impact monitoring platform for the SM sector.
And I'll be presenting our Go Solution Suite today.
The pictures you see here show how the ASM spotter works.
And I'm going to talk to you today about our solution, HIDA, for the oversight and sustainability analysis of raw materials supply chains.
So I urge you to show people why they should care, to help them be innovative and creative and stick to it even when it's hard, to share your power, to share your perspective, and to dare mighty things along with all of us.
It comes down to this. Today, we will hear from our 11 finalist teams as they answer questions live from our group of incredible judges who will be determining the winners of the challenge for $750,000 in prizes.
And even though we're obviously coming through you virtually and digitally, this is really exciting for us to have the judges and all of these finalists share with us live. You're going to learn more about the finalists, their innovations, which are incredible. And we're going to have a live 8-minute question and answer session between the judges and the finalists.
Because no organization to really achieve big things can do things alone. You also hear from our members of our global coalition of partners between each finalist team.
And now we are pleased to introduce our expert judges. They represent different sectors, different perspectives, and they're here to make the final call to determine who will win the prize money to transform artisanal and small-scale mining. Franco Arista Rivera is the Planet Gold Project National Coordinator for the United Nations Development Program. The Planet Gold Program works in 9 countries and seeks to make small-scale gold mining safer, cleaner, and more profitable. With Planet Gold Peru, Franco has collaborated with the Ministry of Environment in the National Action Plan to reduce or eliminate the emissions and releases of mercury in artisanal and small-scale gold mining. He is an expert in mining formalization, gender, gold certification, mineral traceability, and ICT application to ASGM. He will contribute his experience and knowledge about applying best practices related to artisanal mining in countries such as Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. Georgette Barnes-Saki-Ado has worked in the mining sector for 25 years across West Africa as a multilingual administrator, business development and supplies executive, country director, and award-winning entrepreneur. She is a founder and manager of small and medium business entities in the mining sector. She was elected president of the Association of Africa Women in Mining, founder of Women in Mining Ghana, and president of Accra Mining Network. Her interests include local content, economic linkages, gender, inclusion, and diversity. She has co-authored 4 publications in artisanal and small-scale mining and was awarded Female Entrepreneur of the Year in 2019. She was also selected as a Global Inspirational Women in Mining by the Women in Mining UK organization in 2016.
Eileen Lee is the Chief Program Officer leading the Environmental Conservation Program at the Moore Foundation, one of the largest private funders of environmental conservation worldwide. The Moore Foundation distributes over $100 million per year to protect globally important ecosystems through grant making, reflecting Gordon and Betty Moore's passions for scientific discovery, innovation, and for preserving the natural world. Eileen has served as chair of the board for the Environmental Grantmakers Association, led the Wild Salmon's Ecosystem Initiative, helped launch new efforts to address the impact of food production on the environment, and serves on the board of the Biodiversity Funders Group.
Matthew Chambers is an impact investor, social entrepreneur, and chair of the Chambers Federation. Matthew has managed the family business for more than 20 years, expanding operations to the Philippines, Kenya, and the DRC. The Chambers Federation is a US-based accredited impact investment firm and recipient of the US Secretary of State's Award for Corporate Excellence. The Federation specializes in women's economic empowerment, responsible sourcing, and value addition in the artisanal cocoa, coffee, and gold sectors. Matthew led in the formalization of the Democratic Republic of Congo's chocolate and jewelry sectors by building the first in-country chocolate facility and ASM gold jewelry production line, with value chains made up entirely of women. Matthew is also a board member of Alliance for Responsible Mining.
Batteries contain a number of heavy metals, things like mercury, cadmium, and lead, and even though they're present in very, very small quantities, the negative environmental and health effects of those toxic chemicals have been demonstrated. One of the consistent things we've seen in almost all of these mines along the spectrum is an enormous amount of battery waste. We had no idea that it was one set of batteries per miner per day, and that when you extrapolate that out across, the average number of miners, the average number of days they work, and the number of mines in Rwanda, that's something like 7 million batteries a year. Our solution aims to help miners avoid introducing toxic waste in the form of disposable batteries into their communities, and helps them to be able to work more safely by having tools that are fit for purpose. Headlamps that affix to their foreheads so they keep their hands free, lamps that are bright enough so that they can operate safely, and ultimately also reducing the cost of disposable batteries.
Would like to welcome to the stage finalists from Padf for the application eliminating ASM through rechargeable battery, led by Team Padf. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Georgette. We're thrilled to be here today.
Fine. Regarding your provided from the on other
Georgette, I'm so sorry, but the connection's not great. Is there any way that you could repeat the question or put it into the chat box? You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Whoa. So you gave some examples from the United States, and I wanted to find out whether you had some other information on impact locally.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question. Thank you so much for bringing it up. As you might have seen in our pitch video, we have extensive operations in Rwanda. We have a huge team on the ground. We're engaged with miners working at sites all over the country. And we also conducted a survey of those mine sites before proposing this project in order to really understand the issues that mining cooperative owners and the workers were facing. So I think the only example in the slide deck, in the pitch presentation, that might have come from the United States was a statistic about the number of batteries that are swallowed every year by children. And that kind of information, unfortunately, isn't available for Rwanda. But I would say that 100% of all of the other information in our pitch and all of the information that went into developing this very exciting proposal came directly from our organization's long experience and our many, many connections with the people working in artisanal mining in Rwanda.
Okay, thank you for that. I think Eileen also has a question for you. Eileen, can you take on your question now?
Sure. Thank you, team, for that thoughtful presentation and inspiring business model. I'm curious, your pitch emphasizes that there's a strong return on investment for the miners involved here. And I'm curious whether you have considered or are looking at integrating the financing model more tightly into the solution, right? The way that some of these are often built around lending models or models that have return built in that manner.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Aileen. That's a great question. And we definitely are, as part of the solution, planning to build in access to financing, because even though, so it's really important to understand that in Rwanda, it's not the miners themselves that are buying the batteries. It's actually the mine owners that are responsible for supplying anybody working in their operations with batteries and torches. So it's really easy for us to make that kind of cost benefit, cost savings argument, because it's the mine owner who's looking at the books, who's taking hundreds of dollars out of his pocket every day to go out and buy those disposable AA batteries that people are using. And so the cost benefit analysis is pretty straightforward, but there could potentially be an issue to overcome, where getting together the money that it would cost to outfit the mine with a rechargeable torch solution and solar panels or another rechargeable energy source is going to be a larger amount up front than the miners used to spending on a daily basis. So financing is going to be a big part of the package that we offer, and we're going to explore various solutions and get in touch with a number of the different service providers available in Rwanda for that kind of credit facility.
And to the extent that, as you emphasized in your presentation, it frees up capital for expansion, how do you ensure that that doesn't just proliferate, I guess, the problem of artisanal scale mining's footprint?
Well, I think I'm going to throw this question over to my colleague, Karen Hayes, who can explain that maybe artisanal mining's expansion isn't necessarily a problem, but an opportunity.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks, Eileen. Yes, definitely. What we want to do is we want to expand responsible artisanal mining. And by actually looking at things like environmental impact, improved health and safety, this is all part of the formalization process. So with the funding that is saved, we would work with the miners as well through our extensive programming to think about how that funding can be invested, whether it is in the creation of actual new mining opportunities, or improved equipment, improved PPE or health and safety type of equipment, and so on. So there are a lot of different ways we can do it. But certainly if you look at an economy like Rwanda, the mining activity, small scale and artisanal mining activity, is the backbone of the mineral sector there. And so finding ways to expand that responsibly and to deliver safe livelihoods within that is really crucial. And we see this as a contributor toward that.
And just to add, sorry, Georgette. Just to add, one of my colleagues recently authored an amazing book on how artisanal mining, when it's done right, when it's safe, when it's responsible, when it doesn't involve child labor, it actually contributes to all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Everything from eradicating poverty to, zero hunger to environmental protection, both on land and water. So it can really be a driver for development. So the more money that we can give to mine owners and the more support and capacity building we can give them, the more we can make sure that mining is contributing to lifting society up and improving people's lives.
Thank you. I think that's why this whole challenge is so important. I think Matthew has a question for your team as well. Matthew. Hi. Okay, I have a question here. I will read about. Have you considered like the AI
I'm so sorry, Georgette. Would it be possible to repeat that again, please? It's you're just breaking up a little.
Yes, Matthew will take the question.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Apologies for the technical difficulties here. Have you considered using and empowering existing equipment supply chains in ASM communities, which are a critical part of the local economy?
Thank you so much for that question. And the answer is absolutely. With our many years of experience in Rwanda, and frankly, the fact that it's a relatively small country in a very tight-knit ecosystem, we've already identified a couple of potential partners that we could seek out who already have experience in rechargeable batteries and solar installation technology. We're also incredibly supportive of building up local service providers and suppliers for the mining community, and that's one of the reasons that artisanal mining, when it's formalized, when it's done correctly, can contribute so strongly to economic and social development. Because for every one person working in a mine, they need other people in the community that are providing them the tools they need to work in the mine, that are providing the PPE, that are making the lunch that they eat while they're on break from the job site. So it really is this lever for a very holistic rural development that can be very sustainable and target incredibly vulnerable and needy communities.
Okay, thank you so much, Team PAC. We have reached the end of your question and answer session, and we need to move on to the next team. But
okay,
we will first hear. Yes. Do you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would just love to give an opportunity to my colleague Yves to share a recent site visit that he had to a mine site just a few days ago and how that ties into our proposal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I just come from a field trip in Rwanda province in the DRC. And if you have a look at our presentation, you can see another picture of me 10 years ago. And from what I saw last week, artisanal miners are still getting in the pit and using the torches, and they are dropping anywhere, battery, non-rechargeable battery, and all the pollution that can create. So if I think about what I saw in that picture, which is in our presentation 10 years ago, and what I saw last week, 10 years ago, there's still the same practice, the waste of, battery and the pollution of environment. And if something is not done, that situation can continue. I think I was miner myself, and I think this have to find a solution. I was artisanal miner, and I know I use that torches, and I think this is a really important change to get to the renewable energy, to change the way, and also the environment is destroying, and also to save some money for artisanal miners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we will be moving to the next team, Baseline.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
getting access to the socioeconomic, environmental, and mining practice data from the ASM sector is incredibly difficult and expensive. The mines are remote, which means really long round trips. And hiring a professional researcher like myself is really expensive, and it doesn't allow you to do that at scale. For an ASM miner in Zimbabwe, they now need to have environmental management plans. They have no idea where to find those kinds of people. We've built an online marketplace that connects ASM stakeholders with the people, tools, and data they need to make ASM sustainable. The idea eventually is for it to be a full stack service. If you're an ASM miner, if you're at the beginning of your journey, sign up with us and then we will help you get a person who can submit that paperwork to the government, and you would be able to start from a place of sustainability. So no diesel generator, go with solar. Don't use mercury if you're doing gold mining, which most people in Zimbabwe are doing. And we're going to be able to connect thousands, hopefully hundreds of thousands of artisanal small-scale miners to opportunities to make their operations sustainable. We're going to help them connect to the finance, equipment, and the people they need in order to transform their operations, to get rid of things like mercury use and environmental degradation.
Hello, welcome to the stage, the finalist team from Baseline, led by Itai Mary. Welcome, Itai. Thank you,
Hi.
Team Baseline. Thank you, Team Baseline, for an innovative project. We have reached the end. We are happy to have this session with you, and we have a few questions that we would like to ask you, and also to give you a chance to speak a little bit more about the project. How are you?
I beg your pardon, was that a how are you?
Yes.
Yes, I'm fine. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
I think maybe if Georgette's still having internet connections, Georgette, would you like the rest of us to jump in with some questions?
Yes, please jump in.
Well, welcome, Itai. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you handle quality control for the data that the collectors bring into your product?
Yes, sure. So I think at first really we're relying on common sense. So if a miner submits data to us saying they only have 3 employees, but they produce 500 grams of gold over a 7-day period, and they say we also asked them to submit data around mercury use, and they're saying, oh yeah, we're reducing our mercury use. We only use 50 milligrams of mercury to produce this gold. I think we can easily see there, okay, something doesn't quite match up. And then I think the most exciting thing is really around once we can start to get to scale. So once we have a sample size of, let's say, 100 miners in a particular region, right? When you submit data to us, we can easily spot the anomalous observations, and we can remove those from the data set. And obviously, we probably need some sort of feedback process to improve that, to incentivize people to actually be contributing correct data.
I have a question. Hello, Itai. My question is, what is the incentive for artisanal miner or member value chain to want to use the application? Are they digital miners?
I didn't quite hear the tail end, but I think you were really talking about the incentives for them to use the application. So for the first thing for miners is that we connect them to a wider range of suppliers. So if you look at sort of the ways people purchase their products now, they're typically going through just local networks. Whereas once you're connected digitally to an entire marketplace of people who are able to service you in your area, you're no longer limited and constrained to just the people that are in your immediate network or perhaps brokers that you already work with. So the incentive for them is really, first thing is around sort of expanding the number of suppliers, the number of services they're able to access. And then once we start to scale and we can offer things like connecting them with financial service providers, we essentially become a one-stop shop for all of the things that they could require to improve their operations, to make it more sustainable and make it more profitable. I think that's probably the short answer.
Thank you, Itai. Sorry about that. You also said that you were available in 20 countries. And I find that a lot of, you've done.
Yeah, so that was just the data collection service in terms of the number of data collectors that we already have on the platform. So as I explained, because it's not quite clear, we pivoted the idea to be a more open marketplace. But with regards to data collectors, we have dozens of data collectors in numerous countries. So that is a service that we can already offer. Because that was the initial structure of the project. But at the moment, in terms of being able to access the marketplace and have miners interact with suppliers, equipment providers, and other sorts of service providers, geologists, and the like, and that is only currently available in Zimbabwe.
Okay. So how does the verify information that providers give to you?
I think I just answered while you were away, but in short, essentially, we can programmatically identify anomalous information. So if you say if you give us bits of information that are inconsistent with your story, those are things that we are able to tease out from the data set. The example I gave just now, which is if you say you only have 3 employees, but you're producing 500 grams of gold and only using 100 milligrams of mercury, that is something that we can look at and say, okay, wait, actually doesn't add up there. So we'll do that manually at first. But I suppose once we start getting those rules correct, we can easily put that into code.
Okay. I realize that there is a matching system as well. So what about on the side of the service providers?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear it. I think you said that there's a matching system?
Yes. Do you match services with miners?
Okay. So what is the process of matching miners to service providers? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, got it. Okay, yeah. So at the moment, it's quite rudimentary. So if you're a miner, you log onto the website. And you can sort of click from a selection of things of offerings that we have. Are you looking to hire service providers? Are you looking for some equipment? And then you can filter by your location as well. So if you're looking for somebody if you're looking for a geologist in and around Harare, that's data that you can filter for. You can say, I only want to see results from people that are in my location. So it's very straightforward. Just simple menus. You click, and you get the access to the number of service providers that we have in your location.
Okay. Also, I wanted to find out how will data collectors be chosen?
Around just specifically data collectors. So we have. You mean by chosen? So like, how do we? From a pool of data collectors, from the pool of data collectors that we have, or from the outside market? Oh, from the ones that we have? Oh yeah, so that becomes again about proximity.
From a community, how do you make sure that you are getting the right people to give you the data without causing any problems in the community? Yeah.
Okay, I see what you mean. I think at the moment it's quite straightforward. So we start off with if we're doing data collection business, like we did a few in like in this particular area, we essentially go through the list and pick one at a time. So we used let's say we used Brian first, and then we used Koma, like Malcolm. So we just go through the list. If we're asking you to do repeat visits, we just go through the list.
Okay. Eileen, Matthew, any more questions for time?
I have a question, if I could. Could you describe how Baseline differs from other platforms that are on the market?
You mean in terms of like marketplaces? Well, I think the first thing is we are targeted specifically just towards the ASM sector within the countries that we'll operate in. So if you look at something that's more broad, like a general, something you'd be familiar with, the Craigslist version of an African country. That is a sort of a bonanza of all kinds of services. We're able to tailor our offering specifically to the ASM sector. So we create, so even the way we've designed the applications to tailor specifically to our types of service providers, to our types of equipment, rather than sort of a generic Craigslist, like I said, is probably the example that you'd probably be most familiar with. So we tailor specifically to the sector. So it's easier to get around the application, and obviously you'll also save all the information of every possible supplier who's trying to something within a specific community.
Right. Thank you, Aitara. Do we have any more questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Do you have anything you'd like to add before you go out?
No, I think really just thank you guys so much for doing this, and everybody else who's obviously helped to put all of this together. This has been really great, and it's really lit the fire under me to start developing my solution. So yeah, thank you guys for participating.
Thank you very much. So before we go off, we would like to hear a message. We'll take a message from one of our challenge partners, the Pan American Development Fund. Thank you, Aitara.
Thank you.
The Pan American Development Foundation believes in creating a hemisphere of opportunity for all. We work across Latin America and the Caribbean to make our region stronger, more healthy, peaceful, just, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable for current and future generations. Pollution from artisanal and small-scale mining severely impacts the health, livelihoods, and environment of already vulnerable people in some of the most unique regions in the world, such as the Amazon rainforest. PADF works with local partners like Pachamama in Ecuador to raise awareness and advocate for change around this issue.
Congratulations to the finalists. PADF is proud to be part of this coalition bringing innovative solutions in artisanal mining, which affects the well-being of people and the natural world.
While we generally know that things are really tough when it comes to artisanal mining in Eastern Congo, we actually have very little data to show for that. We're dealing with a population that is very vulnerable, very poor. A lot of people have only access to basic cell phones. Mining activities are impacting their lives in so many ways. Matako is a crowdsourcing platform that enables miners and communities in Eastern Congo to report on the impact of ASM in terms of environmental, social, and human rights impacts, and to provide visibility to the corporate sector, governments, and civil society organizations so that they can have a greater impact on the lives of the Congolese people. It's not rocket science what we're doing, but it does help them get a better life and become the drivers of change in this supply chain so that you have products that are not harming the planet and not harming the people.
Hi, Hi, and now I'd like to welcome to the stage the finalist team for Matako and their application titled Impact Monitoring for the ASM Sector, led by the team captain, Antoine Huty. Hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your great submission and video. I'd love to just first understand, given the compliance and risk management emphasis in your application, how does the product that this company is delivering fit versus both broader scale and finer scale tools that are available? So for example, in the finer scale, companies can use site-specific audits. On the broader scale, there's a lot of regional assessment tools available. Help me understand how this serves an important niche despite the availability of those products.
Thank you very much, Aileen, and pleasure to share our experience with you. So I think the contribution we make is that audits are quite expensive, and the coverage of audits for the ASM sector is quite deficient. So we're trying to provide, to go beyond the snapshots that audit offer to provide a more continuous base of information, and to do it directly from the people that have the rights, the miners and the communities themselves. So that provides more frequent data and a basis for auditors to also look at the evidence that's gathered from these voices to formulate and conduct their work. And when it comes to, I think, the macro picture that you outlined in terms of regions, I feel that we have an ability to really mash the data, aggregate the data at a more regional level or sub-regional level. So we can also feed into, our idea is not to replace any of those tools, but really to try to provide a new source of data so that we can improve the quality and coverage of what exists out there.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to invite my fellow judges to jump in with their questions.
Great, thank you. Antoine, could you please detail what impact measurements outside of those related to compliance, such as economic, that can be measured with this tool?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the tool can be, is quite flexible. So when we have aligned it with the key impacts that I think the challenge is looking to also improve on. So we have, already developed questions around child labor, or on the environmental impact on the use of mercury, or environmental degradation of bushes and other aspects like that. So we are really going beyond compliance to really understand what is the impact for the lives of the miners and the communities, and looking also at gender violence, which is something that's very hard to measure. And through mobile phone, we are able to get insights directly from women. That is quite difficult to achieve and quite sensitive, obviously.
How would you use the funds from this grant? If you were to be given the funds, how would you deploy them?
Yeah, so together with our friends and partners, EPs, and a coalition of organizations on the ground, we've been working on that project for the last 2 years. So we've learned a great deal of lessons in Eastern Congo as to how you should conduct that. And so what we want to do in the future is to mobilize these funds to expand the work that we've done, and use these as a catalytic fund. We've already found, strong support from the private sector, and obviously, as you outlined, Aileen, there's big demand and a lot more coming, I think. So there is a good market for that, and so the funds can really have a big multiplier effect to really build on the work we've done with EPs and our friends on the ground to create a marketplace for data that will really, I think, address some of the shortcomings that we currently see in understanding the human rights and social and environmental impacts.
Hello, I have a question. Can you explain more about the mobile credit incentives to users? Is enough credit for the participants?
Sorry, I'm not sure I followed the question, but I didn't get that it was about the mobile incentives. And I think the mobile incentive is one form of incentive amongst, I think, 2 or 3 that I can mention. So obviously, when participants respond to the questionnaires, they'll get either a prize or automatic, additions to their mobile credit. So, which is very welcoming because most of the population we have are poor and they go card by card. So that makes a difference for them, and we have clear evidence for that. But I think there are two other incentives that are important in doing that. Is one is that we are providing them with information, with pricing information around minerals. So that's, I think, another incentive that will lead them to want to use the service. And the third is that we're not doing that from afar. We are embedding that into a local network of organizations that want to use the data, that are interested in doing that, and that are much closer to the ground, to the miners. And so by putting the data back into the hands of local organizations, we have a chance to really make better decisions as to what impacts, what is working, what is not. And so these are, I think, the network of incentives so that I think will really help this project go to scale beyond just the mobile incentives that are, I think, just a trigger and an early incentive that we provide.
At times, kind of providing supply chain data like that to the downstream buyers, unfortunately, just results in kind of a shifting in power in the supply chain, right? That kind of leads to lower returns and lower rents for the producers. What are the safeguards, I guess, to keep the data that these folks are entering from being exploited in that manner?
So, not sure. I mean, I think the safeguards is first. I mean, we provide very strong privacy safeguards. I mean, this is the business model is not based on we're on live stream on a company that sells private data. We don't do that. I mean, it's very sensitive data. We encrypt all the data. So it's not the idea is to really provide a data set and work on data subscriptions that are not going to compromise the identity and the personal information. So that's fundamental to making sure that people can give honest answers, that people will continue to participate. And I think the business model is definitely not relying on trying to extract more value out of the miners.
And if I can add, maybe the idea is to give local mining communities a voice to be heard, like they are sometimes in other supply chains model. And we are working with a network of civil society organizations, about 20 of them in Eastern DRC. We will have primary access to the data, also to be the one that could react on the data set and implement also projects linked to that.
Well, thank you very much, Team Matako. We have reached the end of your question and answer period, and we do need to move on now to the next finalist, TerraPower. But first, we're going to hear from one of our challenge partners, the Wildlife Conservation Society.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We congratulate all the participants of the Artisanal Mining Grand Challenge. In WCS, we look forward to collaborations with you to support our efforts to assess and monitor artisanal mining impacts on the nature, and as we promote best practices in mining health, safety, and the environment, while tackling harmful and illegal practices in the Andes, the Amazonia, and the Orinoquia.
Around the world, there's quite serious mercury contamination that's a result of artisanal and small-scale mining, and gold mining in particular. It contaminates land, damages the health of people and the ecology. And cleaning up mercury contamination is traditionally very expensive, energy intensive, and it's environmentally disruptive. TerraPower turns contaminated sites into renewable energy fields. We grow plants on contaminated land that absorb contaminants while they grow, which remediates the sites over time. We then clean those plants and transform them into biogas, which is a low-carbon fuel to be used in rural places. And came across a newly invented polymer that absorbs mercury from gas, liquids, and also solids when it's mixed together. The technology is aligning a lot of different actors' interests in pursuing something that delivers all these co-benefits. It's really about engaging dispossessed farmers who can then grow these phytoremediation crops and actually get a value for a land that is otherwise going to be growing poison food.
And now let's welcome to the stage Team TerraPower, led by Jeffrey Beyer. Jeffrey, welcome. We're glad to have you join us. Thank you for sharing an innovative product and creative business model. It seems like the next thing you really need to do with TerraPower is move this innovation from the laboratory into the field. Could you talk a little bit about what the ideal field pilot looks like from the standpoint of testing the key assumptions and being able to scale up your product?
Absolutely, yeah. We've got a 2-year technology development plan and commercialization plan, actually, in markets in Myanmar and in Indonesia, working with partnerships of 2 NGOs there. We've identified trial sites of contaminated land that we're going to be able to grow different varieties of plants on to see which ones absorb mercury best and have the best kind of properties for biogas production. We're going to start cultivating those plants in mid-2021 if our next kind of grant funding round is successful, working with farmers to make sure that this is of interest. And also develop the technology development pathway as well, so optimizing extraction of mercury from the plants, and then also optimizing biogas production from those cleaned up plants. So the next trial site is really looking at that 2-year plan in these 2 primary markets.
And now my understanding is that efforts thus far to scale up biogas production in general in Indonesia, despite fairly significant pushes by both foreign donors and the local government, has stumbled because of issues with, basically being able to apply the technology locally, being able to maintain it in these settings. How are you going to, have your digesters and biogas systems working in that context?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a couple of things there. Actually, Indonesia has been one of the more successful biogas markets internationally. And the Dutch development agency, HEVOS, has deployed over 22,000 digesters in the country since 2012. They've trained 1,000 masons to build and maintain these things using locally available supply chains. So we'll use that approach in expanding to markets with less developed biogas markets like Myanmar. The biogas market internationally is expanding by about 20 or 25% per year on average in Africa and Asia. So there is significant growth. One of the big challenges is the upfront capital cost of the digester itself. And that's why I think our business model, if we get investment from investors, is able to offset this $400 to $1,000 upfront capital cost. The return on investment from an anaerobic digester is around 2 years. And we anticipate that by combining biogas sales with sales of carbon offsets, which can be a little bit of a trial to get certified by the UN, but once you know how to do it, it's not so difficult. By combining biogas sales with that carbon offset revenue and any kind of revenue achieved from selling remediation services, those 3 things combined should make an even more attractive return on investment and be attractive to investors and kind of offset that upfront capital cost challenge that's prevented biogas scale up internationally.
Let me invite my fellow judges to jump in.
Who would buy and sell the land? Is this something that's within your model? how do you manage the liability if this is contaminated soil, contaminated land?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's initially at least going to be a site-by-site decision. It depends. In some areas it's a kind of local communal ownership. Other times it's owned informally or not owned at all. It's government land, which has been used in the informal sector. So there's going to be different arrangements depending on which sites we're going to, which countries. My initial thought is that we're going to be farming on land, like in the videos we've seen so far today, which is basically abandoned. So it may just be getting a concession to be able to farm that land from whatever authority owns it right now. Potentially, we're looking at potentially buying the land, which would be low value since it's poisoned, essentially. Buying that land upfront, remediating it, producing this revenue stream over time, and then once the land is cleaned up, selling it afterwards for a higher price because it's been cleaned. So that's a potential route, but we still need to get around the specifics of that. Yeah.
Will you be able to find native plants for this phytoremediation, and how do you make sure that they don't become invasive species if they're not native?
Oh, good. Yeah, so that's one of the things that's going to be in this kind of pre-treatment and site characterization step of our 2-year plan. We identified some plants already, just mint and cress. They absorb mercury surprisingly well. But really the key is going to the sites that are already contaminated and just doing a survey of what kind of plants are already growing natively in the area, collecting those plants and analyzing the mercury uptake that each of them has, those types of properties. That way we can figure out in each of the different ecological zones which plants would be most effective to remediate sites that are already being grown in those areas, and then actually cultivating those plants in the areas. And I'm sure in Ghana versus Myanmar versus Indonesia or Brazil, the types of plants that we'll use are very different. And that's part of the plant inventory process that we need to go through. Interestingly, some of the plants that work really well are like water hyacinth. So I know there's often a mixture of land and like aqueous kind of ponds in these contaminated sites. So we're looking at plants that work both on land and that grow in water. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I think we're approaching, does someone need? Okay. I think we're approaching the end of our question and answer time together, and we need to move on to our next finalist team, Solidaridad. But before we do that, we'll be hearing from the next of our challenge partners, Monga Bay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In a community where our miners are quite illiterate. 70% of them drop out from school. Out of every 10,000 miners, just about 9% of these miners have access to smartphones. There was no organization or innovation that provides the best practices of fair mining to ensure that he's performing responsible mining. We decided to develop the Gold solution. Basically, it's a suite of applications that provides training, support, and guidance to our miners to ensure that they execute responsible mining within the industry in Ghana. We expect that with the kind of training that we give them under production, they should be able to know how to rehabilitate the lands that they've been cultivating or the lands that they've been destroying in order to mine.
Hi, now let's welcome to the stage the finalist team from Solidaridad for their application titled Gold Solution by Solidaridad, led by team captain Ahmad Abdul Basit. Welcome, very glad to have you all with us today. As I read your proposal, it seemed like your solution is really premised on the willingness of downstream brands, right, to really make a significant investment in upgrading the sustainability of the ASM supply chain. But I'm curious, if that's the premise, right, help me understand why your application is better than, say, just directing those resources more simply into, right, distributing equipment, distributing supplies that allow distributing best practice knowledge, right? What does the application add in because it's certainly a little bit more of a complex transaction.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Ghana on behalf of the team. My colleague Monique is from Sao Paulo. My colleague Yao is from Ghana as well. Straight to the question. I think this is a very important question, and I would let my colleague Monique add more substance and throw light to this particular question.
Yeah. I think what we add that has been very difficult, and Solidaridad has worked in this kind of traditional type of project to a great extent worldwide, is we add scalability and the possibility for greater impact, because traditional approaches have remained very niche and very tied to kind of setting up closed pipe systems. And what we're trying to do is really reach a wider audience of ASM miners and give them the support they need to improve their livelihoods in ways that aren't tied to traditional international development approaches.
To add to what Monique just said, competitive edge here for us is the fact that our solution is user-centric. What it means is that we build this solution with the miner in mind. Two, it is very adaptable in the context of our miners, the ecosystem. Three, it is comprehensive. Most importantly, it is sustainable. And beyond that, we've built in incentives to make sure that we improve the livelihood of our miners. And also the last one, the fact that it has the ability to grow in the market in order to be able to attract investors.
Yeah.
Hello. Could you explain examples how works the rewards token?
Yeah. Do you want me to take that one?
Very good question. I'll let Monique take that question again, then I'll throw more light to it.
Yeah. So you will get a reward based on your adoption of good practices, your willingness to interact with our digital tools, your attendance of trainings, a variety of a package, like you would get a mileage program for an airline for a certain type of behaviors that we want to incentivize. And then you can exchange them for services and discounts, such as access to PPE or the use of mercury-free shaking tables. And that accelerates interaction and behavior change in ways that aren't so dependent on outside actors, but that are more community-driven and make sense for the communities where we work.
Just to also add, the reward system is set that on the incentive is well designed in terms of the nomenclature, not just to reward the miners, but to also ensure that it's validated to make sure that they are, practicing the responsible mining practices, just to be very sure of what we are giving to the miners in terms of reward or incentive.
Yeah.
Do you have downstream actors already contractually signed on to support your program? And are we talking about above market price or within market price? Cumulatively.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I would let my colleague Yao speak on this with the support of Monique.
Yes, we do have a number of downstream actors that we've partnered with in our general program. That's the Solidaridad Gold program. Some of them include Anexium, which is a company in the Netherlands, helping with mercury-free processing technology. We've had discussions also with some refineries in Canada, specifically Valcambi, and they've also partnered with us. So we do have a number of downstream actors who are really interested in this and also interested in upscaling as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to highlight that our business model revolves around providing ESG insights and ESG impact. So we're not predicated on creating a market premium for the gold itself, because that would be too akin to certification, and that has been proven to be too narrow to really work at scale. And what we're trying to reach really is scale of miners. So that's not how we're operating.
Georgette, if you're trying to jump in, we can try again. Okay, I think, yeah, unfortunately, Georgette, we're still having trouble hearing you, but maybe just to try to throw in one last question. Could you let us know whether this application, is it going to be available to all miners, or are you limiting it to miners who've already entered the formalized sector in some way, who have some kind of regularization to their work?
I think this is a very important question. Of course, within our program intervention, we have a scope within which we operate with a certain group of miners. But hey, that's the opportunity when it comes to scalability. With the good works that we are doing, with the control group that we have, with almost about 1,063 miners, we anticipate the 200,000 miners that we want to reach by 2022 and the 1 million miners we want to reach by 2025 would not necessarily come within the control group. However, the good works that we'll be doing to change their lives would be more like good stories that would help bring on board other miners who are not necessarily within our program interventions to also gain that benefit. I'll let my colleague Yao say a little, and then Monique can also add a little on this.
Yes, we are targeting both the licensed, I would say, and also unlicensed miners. In Ghana, the challenge mainly is to do with the unlicensed miners. That's where we have lots of issues with water pollution, etc. So the tool is not just limited to the licensed operations, but also targeting the unlicensed ones. And one model that we're going to adopt with the tool is on formalization. How do we educate them using the tool for them to formalize the operations? So that is key for us, because if we're able to target, let's say we're able to talk to about 200,000 miners, for instance, and out of that, let's say 50% of them are illegal miners. Now they know the processes involved in formalizing the activities, and it will be easier for them to do that because we've also had some interactions with the Minerals Commission. So the duration for licensing operations has been reduced. So then, but most people are not aware of that. So the tool will then be we're going to use that to educate them, for them to know the processes involved in formalizing the activities.
Thank you, Team Solidaridad. We've now reached the end of your question and answer period, but thank you for joining us today, and we need to move on to our next finalist team, Project Inambari. But first, we'll hear a message from another one of our challenge partners, Pure Earth.
Hi everyone, my name is Jen Maraschino. I'm the Director of Development for Pure Earth.
a global nonprofit addressing toxic pollution issues that affect the health of people around the world, predominantly children. And when it comes to artisanal mining, our specific focus is addressing mercury pollution, eliminating mercury from artisanal mining, working hand in hand with miners to maintain their livelihoods. And we've even done some work ecologically closing mining sites using forest restoration. From all of us at Pure Earth, I just want to say we're so impressed by your creativity and your commitment to coming up with these innovative solutions to addressing the challenges surrounding artisanal mining. We can't wait to learn more about your innovations during these closing ceremonies. We wish you the best of luck, and we can't wait to see what comes next and how Pure Earth could possibly be part of your work moving forward. So congratulations and good luck.
Regulators in the Amazon have really limited resources. It's very difficult for them to go out to the site and actually investigate it on the ground. This could be a 2 or 3 day trip in small boats to get out there. So they need a reliable and timely system that can actually let them know when there's new mining activity in an area. So that's what we're trying to present with Project Inambari, which is a public map to monitor mining activity in the Amazon and in tropical forests generally. So we're developing a classification method for specifically detecting mining sites from artisanal small-scale mining. We already have what is almost a worst-case scenario in a few areas, like La Pampa, where we have this massive desertification. But we also see that intervention can work. Having something that researchers or community leaders can point to and saying that here is mining activity that affects us and it's clearly ongoing. We hope that it is going to drive government accountability.
And now let's welcome to the stage the team for Project Inambari, an early alert system for tropical forest mining, led by Team Captain Bjorn Bergman. Welcome, Project Inambari team, and really good to have you here with us today. In your description of Project Inambari, you were very clear that this is premised on continued kind of donor support, whether from philanthropies or multilaterals or other donors. And you sort of cited the work that you've done with similar projects like Global Fishing Watch and others that have been able to do this successfully. But I have to say, as a philanthropic donor in this space, I get nervous about how many different platforms we're spinning up of this type and what it takes ultimately to maintain these data sets of land use, land cover change. I'm curious, do you see any opportunity with the other platforms that are out there to either consolidate some of these underlying land use, land change classification data sets? Would your consortium be open to that as a long-term sustainability measure for this data?
Yes, thank you very much. And we have had experience with launching a map like this, which is Global Fishing Watch, which has, I think, really succeeded in its mission of making resource extraction public. This is now an independent organization with more than 50 employees. But let me actually turn this over to John Amos, our founder, to talk a little bit more about the direction that this would go with funding and collaboration with other organizations.
Thanks, Bjorn. Well, personally, and based on our experience with Global Fishing Watch, we think it's very important that the platform remain free. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That the platform remained free and open to the public. And that has opened doors with Global Fishing Watch that might not have opened if we'd come in looking like a vendor selling an information solution. But you're right, there is a proliferation of information platforms being built out there in conservation tech space. We're actually in active discussions with groups like National Geographic, Descartes Labs, and Defenders of Wildlife, who are all interested in solving the change detection problem and building platforms to host a good user experience and user interaction. So we're not wedded to the idea of building a platform. We're more focused on building the engine for multiple platforms. So our focus is on creating and refining and validating the model. And that's why we're so excited about the partnership with Syncia, which brings us the opportunity to bring in information from other sensors to provide ground truth, training data, and ultimately a stronger model that can then feed analytical results into a whole universe of platforms.
And maybe further along these lines, so the government of Norway has just announced that they'll be making freely available the data sets from the Planet Labs, Airbus, Kongsberg Alliance, right? Does that lead you to does that change your plans around having Sentinel-1 be the basis for this set, right? And how easy is it to adapt the work that you've done to that different data set, if you would?
Yeah, so it's really great to have additional image resources being made public like this from the government of Norway. And we have decided to initially concentrate on working with satellite radar, Sentinel-1, because it has a lot of advantages for the Amazon, where there is heavy cloud cover much of the year. In designing our model, we can also bring in additional information sources to help get improved results.
So
I'd like to invite.
Excuse me.
Please, Francisco.
What is the differential value of your proposal in comparison with the Geobosques platform of the Peruvian government?
Yeah, so if you could answer that, Jorge. Jorge is a researcher at Syncia in Madre de Dios, and also working with Peruvian Parks, CERNAP, with their remote sensing team.
Thanks, Bjorn. Yeah, I'm actually an end user of Project Inambari, and I'm currently in charge of the remote monitoring and deforestation in natural protected areas at the Peruvian Park Service. I'm also Syncia's drone pilot and remote sensing specialist. Currently, deforestation alerts don't have a clear cause, and investigating on the ground is expensive. Project Inambari will provide the specific alerts for new mining activity. We also work together closely with the Peruvian environmental prosecutors, and we want to use Project Inambari maps to see the historic record of mining in an area along with the most recent detections. Integration with training data from Syncia's drone imagery will also allow us to pick up new mining in difficult detection areas like riverbanks and already mined lands, providing essential support for prosecutors.
Thanks, Jorge. Yeah, so I think a large part of the added value is getting more specific alerts to mining activity detections, as opposed to just deforestation, and then also the cloud penetrating radar imagery that we're basing the system on.
So how would you ensure that data is used appropriately for correct decision making?
Christian, Christian has designed the detection model. So if you want to talk a little bit about the process for evaluating our results.
Sure. So the model is based on, our output analysis is based on comparison to expert classification. So right now that has been historically based on SkyTruth analysts' documentation of where mine sites are located in the Peruvian Amazon. But we're obviously very excited that we're going to be able to bring in high-resolution drone imagery from SENSEA to help further validate the accuracy of our detections.
Well, thank you, Team Inambari. We've reached the end of the time for your question and answer session, and we do need to move on to our next finalist team, the Mercury Capture Systems for ASGM Gold Shops. But thank you for being with us today. And next, we'll also hear a message from one of our challenge collaborators, Delve. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
COVID-19 is not only a public health emergency globally, but it's also an international economic crisis. The onset of COVID-19 had a profound impact on artisanal and small-scale mining communities around the world. We use products that have minerals in them that have been mined by artisanal miners.
There's ASM in pretty much every developing country. We tend to focus on the precious minerals and metals segment.
We think around 40 million people currently work in the sector, but of course behind every person there's their families.
The sector's success hinges upon people's mobility. Because of COVID-19, there's been a lot of crackdown on movement, and that's prevented, for example, supplies of food coming into sites.
Since when this sickness arrived in this country, a lot of things have been going on. A commodity price, a price of the food stock, transportation, everything has been going on in this country. We are finding it difficult to sell our minerals, so we are struggling. The price of these minerals has been falling in this country.
That's very, very difficult for me to have food for my family. I am a family man. We cannot move. There is not too much movement.
In order to address the issues of artisanal small-scale miners, we need to understand what the impacts are on them. And without that data, we're just going off our assumptions. So the World Bank, along with partners across 22 countries, has conducted a data collection initiative to assess the impacts of COVID-19 on selected ASM communities. And the results of this have already been published on the Delve platform.
Nothing has ever been done like this before, and it's going to gather a lot of the baseline information we need in order to make these very, very important decisions when it comes to administering support for the sector, as well as more broadly formalizing the sector.
This most recent survey has given us some key insights into the impacts of COVID-19 on their livelihood and on their health, and surprisingly too, on their food security.
ASM is almost exclusively treated as a mining issue. And it's not a mining issue, it's a livelihoods issue.
The World Bank's EGPS Trust Fund has created an emergency response window. So we're going to provide through that facility short and medium-term assistance for a range of different activities that will benefit the artisanal and small-scale mining communities. We feel we've got an opportunity to really make a difference, improve their incomes, but also improve their security and their ability to earn a livelihood.
The majority of artisanal and small-scale gold miners utilize mercury to concentrate gold away from undesirable minerals. And as a result, you end up with mercury pollution in the soil and the water, but the resulting amalgam that they form, they have to heat up. The mercury vapor goes everywhere into the air. It's an immediate threat to human and environmental health. We've developed a mercury capture system that allows people in artisanal and small-scale gold mining communities to safely work with gold and amalgams so that when they heat them, the mercury is captured, it's removed from the atmosphere, it's removed from the environment, and most importantly, it's removed from the areas in which they're breathing in air. And so our innovation really makes mining a much safer process than it has been historically. We view our technology as limiting mercury releases now, but also we're going to be in a great position that as mercury starts going away, to kind of move forward and assist in the development and implementation of new technologies.
Welcome to the stage, the finalist team for the application titled Mercury Capture for ASGM Gold Shops, led by team captain Alan Kiefer. What is the business model or is only salesman to gold shops?
So I'm sorry you broke up there, but I did hear what is the business model. And so one of the things that I'll start off doing is talking a little bit about our plan. During the original application, we took a look at when we applied the NASA ARL levels. And so right now we have a product that we know that works both in the lab and the field, and we're looking to move this forward to test it in an end user environment, and particularly in gold shops. What I would say with regards to the business model, actually, Suzette, would you like to chime in on that?
Sure. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We're looking at providing gold shops with the system. In other words, is that they're going to end up making more money with the system, and it's very scalable where we can actually then take it around the world. We've already proven its ability to work at this particular time. I'm not sure I answered the question.
Well, it strikes me that for the gold shops using this product, right, there's both, I would assume, some training needed to be able to use it safely. And then there's also the risk that as the product lives out in the field, to the extent that it degrades, right, that there could also be more danger from that. Could you tell us a little bit more about what safeguards you have in place to make sure that the training is there, that people know when a product's breaking down?
Sure, and one of the things that I would point out is that when you take a look at the system, it seems remarkably complex, but the majority of the technology is actually in the heating system itself, the induction coil. The mercury capture system itself is remarkably simple. It has a terminal vacuum pump, and it draws the heated vapors through a series of basically a cooling tower and some bubblers. And so in terms of safety, we've taken care of a lot of that on the front end. Pretty much everything with regards to the actual capture component can be built with materials found in country. They're really inexpensive materials, and so routine maintenance will solve most of that problem. There is a component that we will need on the ground where either our partners or our organization would have to have certain equipment to test and basically determine the safety of the system as it moves through. We've worked closely with the governments of Guyana and Peru, and we've conducted training with them already on how to use this instrumentation to go through and monitor emissions associated with gold shops. And we feel confident that there's a natural extension there to bridge the gap between gold shops and local, regional, and national governments to basically be able to do just that, monitor in the field in real time.
Thank you.
You just mentioned a key point there about induction coil. So is an induction furnace required? And then second part to that question, is that part of your 1,500 PPU, your price per unit?
So it's a good question. We have developed multiple systems that we have tested over the last 4 years in Ecuador, Guyana, and Peru. We've really been working on getting the heating system just right. And so we've used open flames, we've used conductive heating, and we've used induction. And by far and away, induction is the superior platform because it heats only the amalgam and not the air around it. So it makes condensation significantly simpler and more efficient. The reality is that there are some downsides. Induction coils do require certain specific energies, and in some cases they require cooling water and things of that nature. What we would point out is where we've been very pleased to find out is that mercury itself is induction active. And so you don't actually need to heat a secondary container. You can use much lower energy than you would think. And so our original prototypes were overkill. We had very powerful induction coils. We have actually found that we can purchase handheld induction coils used in the automotive industry that are remarkably inexpensive, and we can actually heat sponge gold up using one of those. And then as we said, the patented mercury capture system on the back end has no issue with that.
So then the follow-up part to that would be the PPU, your price per unit.
Sure. And so we're working right now. We would like to end up with a system that's approximately $1,200 to the consumer. And that would be specifically targeted for independent gold shops. It seems like that number is high, but in reality, in working in Guyana and Peru, we know that gold shops have spent a lot more on ventilation systems that don't capture mercury at all. And so we think that that's in a good position. We've also been working recently. We have an NDA signed with a European gold refinery, and we would be looking at building larger systems for them so that they would have access to directly importing sponge gold from artisanal and small-scale gold mining communities.
Okay. So on from that, do you have any ideas on how to reduce field burning of amalgam in the field before it reaches the gold shops? This is 3 parts, so please bear with me. Second, how do they safely transport the amalgam to the gold shops? And since you're using an induction coil, I think I know your answer to this already, but how is the gold kept visible if not using an induction furnace?
So all 3 very good questions, and the first one's really important. If we can stop the burning in the field, we can dramatically decrease mercury emissions from artisanal and small-scale gold mining to the atmosphere. And so what we would be doing is working with miners' unions and co-ops, and we have great connections in both Guyana and Peru to do this, specifically trying to get them to a position where they're bringing their full amalgam to a centralized location to burn. And that location could be the gold shop. You can imagine a situation where a miners' union themselves would actually purchase one of these to encourage burning in one location. And so basically training and education is how we're going to slow down burning in the field. With regards to safely transporting the amalgam, in terms of human health, it's not an issue at all. You can keep these amalgams underwater. It prevents the volatilized mercury vapor from coming off. There is always going to be a component with regards to safely transporting it with regards to crime. But that's something that, again, the miners' unions will have to work with. And then your final question about the visible burning of the amalgam. What's essential here is that our initial designs 4 years ago did not have that component, and the gold shop owners rejected it outright. Our current design does everything behind glass, and you can actually see this in the videos that we've posted. So sponge gold, within 5 seconds, the miner sees it glowing. They can trace the mercury through the system to make sure that they're not losing gold. It's important. This is part of mining culture is distrust. And we try to be literally as transparent as possible in this process.
Thank you, Team Mercury Capture System. We have reached the end of your question and answer session and need to move on the next finalist team, Padf. pervasive exploitation activity detection and response. But first, we will hear a message from one of our challenge partners, the World Wildlife Fund.
Hi, I'm Jordi Serkin of WWF Bolivia. I'm really excited about Conservation X Lab's ASTM challenge because I think it's going to produce innovations that will help resolve an incredibly important and difficult conservation problem in the Amazon, which is the issue of small and medium-scale gold mining and the mercury contamination, which is killing hundreds of thousands of people across the Amazon, including indigenous people. I'm excited to see and hear more about the proposals and innovations that all the finalists have produced, and send my congratulations to all the finalists who've gotten this far. I know it's been very difficult, and I'm sure that they have incredibly important innovations that have enabled them to get where they are. So again, congratulations to everyone, and look forward to hearing more about this.
We use the results of these activities, whether we know it or not, every day. When we buy these materials and we can't actually say, have these been sourced in the right way or not, it's hard to stand by those values. What we're trying to address is what we'll call the completeness gap in terms of data around artisanal mining and more broadly in metal supply chains. We trained some machine learning algorithms with a whole bunch of satellite imagery to do with the known artisanal mines, and from that we're able to basically create a solution that then can detect also the ones that are unknown. We're not proposing this to necessarily fix specific things. What we think it will do is empower those in positions who can affect that change. So, you know, they will literally know where to drive to really assess the impact, where to drive to mitigate, you know, these environmental impacts and these human impacts.
Welcome to the stage the finalist team from RobJoc for their application titled PDAR, Pervasive Exploitation Activity Detection and Response, led by Team Captain Scott Thompson. You mentioned in your pitch that you want to fine-tune your model and to have more real-time data to do so. Can you clarify what you mean by fine-tuning? Do you want to increase the temporal resolution of your model, or do you also increase the accuracy?
Yeah, very good question. So in terms of fine-tuning, we want to, number one, increase the accuracy. So we have accuracy of around 88% at the moment. And then we have it on a certain terrain type as well. So we also want to increase the coverage in terms of terrain types also. And then we want to go further with not just identifying locations, but furthering in terms of the footprint of these different locations as well, both ASM and LSM, and then also the time frequency as well.
Yeah, if I can quickly just jump in and add, it's
it's very useful that there is lots of historical satellite data that exists, which we can utilize for further model training, which will improve the accuracy, which we haven't yet undertaken, but we are easily capable of doing.
Right. You are aware that there is not enough open data, no, open source for ASM, or in any case it is unreliable. How would you approach this problem?
So, another really good question. So we come from quite a commercial background in terms of LSM activity, as well as further downstream in terms of helping procurers of different raw materials establish their supply chains. And it's basically a process of elimination as well. You've got, for particular metals, they always end up at a certain consolidation point, and that's often the refining point, and that's where you've got kind of the truth data set. And then the LSM activity is quite well reported also. And then what you're left with then is, X being ASM activity. And then what we're doing there is using regression models to then, proportion that remaining amount to the identified locations based on the respective area, and then whatever open data is actually available.
Could you tell us a little bit about how the both underlying land use, land change data and the traceability data, how that differs from what's currently available on some of the other public platforms that are starting to bring this kind of information together?
Yeah. What we're seeing is, or what we've seen is a bit of a gap in putting that data into the context of these supply chains. So we're big believers in trying to impact change both from upstream and downstream. And we see that, it's very good at the ground level, a lot of these data sets, but where we feel that they fall short is they're not putting into context of the actual supply chain as well, where we believe the downstream could then, be a big enabler of change upstream as well.
Thank you.
I have two questions. I'm going to combine them together if you don't mind. Is this platform currently in use by any supply chain actors, or are you tied to any existing live supply chains? And who owns the data that you're charging subscriptions to access?
Yeah, so it's currently not in use. So we've got a target for it to be on market by Q1 21. IP is something that we need to, we still need to solve, and we certainly need to explore further partnerships there. And then one of the things that or one of the key activities we have towards the end of the year is forming some meaningful partnerships for distribution and further usage in both ends of the spectrum. So from first responders right down to supply chain participants.
If I may quickly add as well, we have a rapidly growing client portfolio currently with the company, and by utilizing them, that will be one important channel for both testing, validation, but then also distributing our platform as well.
Thank you, Tim. Peter. We have reached the end of the question and answer session and need to move on the next finalist team, ASM Spotter. But first, we will hear a message from one of our challenge partners, the Chambers Federation.
Hi, I'm Matthew Chambers, Chairman of the Chambers Federation. We are a Michigan, Great Lakes state-based business investing into the Great Lake region of Central Africa. We have been very excited to be part of the Conservation X Artisanal Mining Grand Challenge. And I'd like to make a special thank you to all of the applicants which invested their time and energy into submitting grant applications. It has truly been an honor and a privilege to have reviewed your work. As millions of people depend on artisanal mining for their livelihoods, it is truly amazing to see so many new and innovative ideas being submitted for this grand challenge. Good luck to everyone.
There's a secret hidden in your computer, in your cell phone, in your car, in your jewelry. The secret is that the source of a huge portion of the minerals that power our world come from small mining operations. Artisanal and small-scale mining has been happening for years, but its footprint has expanded as our appetite for minerals has grown. There are huge consequences to these mining operations. From water and soil pollution to habitat degradation, rampant deforestation, and damage to the health of thousands. We are all responsible for this growing challenge.
The biggest problem in illegal mining is that the sector is not really regulated in a lot of countries. Lots of mining is happening illegally, hurting concession rights. Also environmental health is pretty much endangered. It's actually over large remote areas. That's why local authorities have problems actually finding illegal mining sites. They actually need to go there on the ground, actually trying to cover basically the entire country. We've trained a machine learning algorithm that actually is able to detect formations of illegal mining sites in rainforest areas. We could actually train the algorithm to identify those mining sites automatically. It's now happening to an accuracy of 80 to 90%, which is already very, very good. And we now want to apply this to different geographies and actually to all the countries where actually ASM mining is taking place.
Welcome to the stage this team for their application titled ASM Spotter, led by team Captain Robert Heason.
Hello, hi.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Have indicated that your current model can detect 75 and 90% of all sites. For your user, is high enough accuracy for them to make the decision and take the action they need? If they need higher accuracy, how will you work on improving your models?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually, I think in machine learning, you actually have two major levers. So the first one being adding more training data to the model, and the other one being, using a different network architecture. So within the first project we did in Suriname, we only had limited training data. So we labeled more than 10,000 satellite images, which is quite some data, but still not enough to train a real good machine learning model. So one of the things we'll do in the next stage is actually adding more training data and also verifying this on the ground. So actually the next step will be not to have such an interface only at the desktop for end users, but also having a mobile app for people on the ground who can actually verify it and control it to learn a little bit like how the machine learning model, where it makes mistakes. It still makes mistakes, so I think the 75% is more in the smaller clusters and in 90% more in the larger clusters, but we are actually hoping to add more training data and to have some ground truthing on the ground to increase this to 95+% to have a higher accuracy over the long term.
Okay, thanks. One question more. How can you ensure that the information generated by the platform can be translated into accompanying action for artisanal miners or mitigation of illegal mining?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll pass this over to Adam, who's expert in this field. Adam?
Thanks so much for the question. I think this is a really, really important one and really fundamental to the solution that we provide through ASM Spotter. We recognize that technical solutions in and of themselves aren't going to formalize the ASM sector. It's about working with the partners or the users of the solution, and that includes the governments of mineral host nations. It includes large-scale mines, and it includes midstream and downstream buyers of minerals who are looking into responsible production. We feel that being able to train our users in adequate formalization processes, but also to plug into and understand the existing processes that they're already working on will be essential to realizing impact on the ground for miners. We think the efficiency of the system that we provide compared to traditional solutions will also provide savings to governments in particular, which will mean that they'll be able to use the resources that are spared to channel them towards training efforts, towards potentially financing schemes that they can provide to miners and other forms of technical assistance that are really, really important, but are so rare in reality. So this is really how we hope to bring the technical solution to the user needs and really generate impact on the ground.
Thank you. Eileen?
And as part of your technical solution, are there any plans to make the training data set public along with the actual maps and products that you'll be making available?
Yeah, this could very well be possible. We, of course, it really needs some. I think a major component of this is the good governance, right? So we could provide the training data for institutions or public institutions we trust. But of course, if you publish it and totally open, then it could also be misused, and that is a major threat in this. So we would publish this to other institutions we trust, but not for the general public because it could be misused in a lot of ways. But so that's a major component. So it's not only satellite imagery, it's not only machine learning, but it's good governance. So I think those three components together, are essential for the product.
Thank you.
Adam, tying into your previous response to one of the last questions about impact, looking to the future, could this be proactively used to inform miners where to mine, therefore increasing efficiencies, reducing time and resources on exploration, which could also have the potential of reducing deforestation?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's a really good question, Matthew. And I think at the moment it's conceived as, identifying activity that is already taking place, as opposed to, zeroing in on potentially geologically important areas that artisanal and small scale miners could use. I think we would need to defer to our partners at the University of Aachen to understand really the degree of use of remote sensing solutions for that purpose. We also need to remember the type of data that's publicly available that keeps this kind of solution cost effective may not provide that level of detail. However, I think by identifying potential rush situations or rapid growth situations early through this solution as an early alert mechanism, what you're able to do is intervene early to make alternative geographies available to artisanal miners through other processes, and that indeed will help to limit deforestation and other biodiversity impacts, particularly when mining activity is in and around protected areas and critical ecosystems.
ASM Spotter, we have reached the end of your question and answer session. I need to move on to the next finalist team, PQ. But first, we will hear a message from one of our challenge partners, the Wildlife Conservation Society.
The vast Congo Basin forests are home to a network of rivers and clearings important to the planet's largest land mammals, our closest relatives, and so many more mammal species. This terrestrial and freshwater biodiversity is also critical for tens of millions of people, from forest villages downstream to towns and cities. It is critical for indigenous hunter-gatherers who depend upon a healthy ecosystem for their culture and well-being. This richness extends to minerals in the forest. Gold, diamonds, and 3Ts support the livelihoods of thousands of people, particularly in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Sadly, these resources are often poorly governed. Central Africa's protected areas are particularly at risk to armed clandestine mining actors who seek refuge in remote areas such as this camp above. These activities cause siltation and mercury contamination, pollution that will have decades of impacts to wildlife, communities, and some of Africa's biggest cities downstream. Child labor, extortion, and poor sanitary conditions further degrade social justice and welfare in communities that are already vulnerable and marginalized. While wildlife poaching is expanding to supply meat to the mining workforce, great apes are particularly threatened by bushmeat poaching, with young individuals, like this chimp, orphaned. Whole populations are also threatened, like the critically endangered Grauer's gorilla. Its primary threat is poaching related to mining. WCS warmly welcomes Conservation X Lab finalists to the protected areas of the Congo Basin to tackle the region's most intractable problem. Detecting illegal mining through satellite imagery and assessing illegal mercury use can bolster WCS's investments in diversified livelihoods and good governance for responsible mining around the basin's protected areas. Thank you.
Well, mercury is a pollutant of concern, and its main source is this type of mining. When you go to see what's happening there in terms of monitoring, you find the amount of monitoring effort isn't in proportion to the impact at the moment. Major reason is the cost of instruments, the difficulty in operating them. Those instruments themselves are really suited for laboratories. We make a new type of mercury sensor that's built on the same photonic chips, like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit. And so we've now been able to build a whole mercury sensor around that's about a cubic centimeter in volume. Ideal for these settings where you might not have wall power, where you might be in a pretty remote spot. There are no labs currently, or where there are no analytical abilities, but a lot of mining happening. We'd like to, change that to where we have monitors that are living and staying in those communities.
I'd like to welcome to the stage the finalist team from PicoUne for their app titled Plasmonic Mercury Analyzers for Artisanal small-scale gold mining, led by Team Captain Jay James. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you. And yeah, sorry about the mouthful on the title of our project.
Aileen, would you like to lead us off on questions?
Sure, happy to jump in. So thank you for sharing about your very interesting sounding product. I'm curious, how well adapted is this design for users in the field, particularly non-technical users potentially operating in remote settings? And given the context in which they'd been operating, how do you think about remote support and training for these folks and making that cost effective?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so this was designed, our products, including the Runabout, which is for water and soil and biological samples, that was developed under the Superfund research program specifically for contaminated sites in the field. So it was developed, in the field, like mining sites, legacy mining sites in the United States, like the Carson River site where the Comstock lode was, which is in Nevada. So, in terms of that was from the beginning designed for field use. They're battery powered and portable. In terms of our customers, we currently do rent systems out for remote use without in-person training. So that's sort of the basis of our handoff as it is. And they're used at contaminated sites from industrial sites to mining sites. At this point, only in the United States, but we've sent out some quotes for South America and finding partners around the world. So I would say, the objective was that these were designed for non-researchers, so like a technician level of understanding, and they and they're priced really at that level, and training is at that level.
Thank you.
So getting into price, would you talk more about that, the unit cost? And it sounds like you have a different suite of products.
Sure. So the basis of our technology is around our proprietary design for a new type of mercury sensor, which uses a film of gold particles. And what's different about this is rather than a mercury lamp, which is used in all the UV spectroscopy that's currently done, those systems start in the tens of thousands of dollars. So we can use the same sort of optics that are in, like a Fitbit or other portable consumer products. So the price point is much lower. The hazard posed by them and the size and power use is much lower. So, we're 5 to 10 times cheaper on our parts than any competitive system. So that was, I think, in our customer discovery for ASM, that was a leading barrier, was the cost of the devices and the difficulty of handing over a $40,000 instrument to and leaving it in country. So we see a lot of samples being sent to labs out of the community. And what community testing has done is often, systems that don't remain in sight. So the idea is that if we can drop the price by these 5 to 10 times, we can be at a point where we can build out capacity to monitor mercury in the air, in the water, in the soil, and in the biological media like blood and urine and in fish samples to track exposure and contamination long term. So these processes, where there's mining, the legacy of the mercury is a long time. There's going to be a long-term monitoring needed to protect human health and the environment, and that's for that we need bigger capacity in country.
So speaking about that, on this note of biological media, what's your readiness level to work specifically for blood sampling and other forms of biological testing?
Yeah, so we've tested relevant samples in the lab. What we haven't done, we haven't investigated the in the United States, there's a certain amount of FDA requirements for human subject testing and contamination testing if it's done in sort of a hospital type setting. So we are in no stage of approval of that. But I think as like a field screening, or if there's local regulations that are different, certainly our technology is, the sample handling component is already proven and developed in the field. So I would say that's at a 9 in the sort of NASA technology readiness level standard. And then I guess some of the barriers that we would like to investigate would be sort of how readily we can expand into that use given the local rules and the sort of human factors issues.
So kind of staying on the same track then, if you were to just guesstimate on your time to be ready to deploy into an ASM field, how long do you think until you're ready to do that?
So we have commercial systems now, and we have, so about half of our income is from customers on similar sites where these are using a battery-powered system to measure soil and water and identify contamination, as well as we're about 6 months out from a new suite of monitors that are, even for us, like a big jump down in cost and size. So I think for the ASM, we're really targeting that line of products. And I think summer, in particular right now, the difficulty of getting anywhere and doing these sorts of work, we're planning to be ready when field work resumes in 21.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'd like to thank the team from PicoYoon. We've reached the end of your questions and answer session and need to move on to the last finalist team, Clean Gold. But first, we'll hear a message from one of our challenge partners, the Water, Environment, and Human Development Initiative.
Thank you.
Congratulations to the 11 innovators that are at the table in this final stage of the ASM Grand Challenge. You are all winners because the innovations we have are quite diverse and they address the most critical challenges that are faced in the ASM sector. We are confident that these projects are going to lead to positive change to minimize the negative socioeconomic and environmental impacts that face ASM. We are also confident that this will contribute to better governance and management systems to improve the value chains, but also to protect the environment and to sustain healthy ecosystems while supporting livelihoods of the communities in the mining sites. While we move forward, we would like to encourage the innovators to reach out to the partnership that has been established through this platform. We therefore wish you the very best, and we look forward to collaborating. Thank you.
For thousands of years, miners have been using mercury to amalgamate fine gold. Very, very hard to pan without losing it. And all over the world are abandoned mine sites because the gold is too fine to capture with conventional systems. This can go back and get that gold. I went to the Oregon coast where mining was happening back in the 1860s, and I went to beaches where I was recovering fine gold that had blown through their systems 100 years ago. What Clean Gold is a specially designed magnetic plate, a mercury-free fine gold recovery system that also recovers platinum and other high-density minerals of commerce. Without using chemicals, it can also recover mercury. A miner with just a simple water pump and a shovel and some clean gold plates could pass ore through this system and recover mercury, amalgam, and fine gold. It's a money-generating exercise, not just an environmental exercise.
I'd like to welcome to the stage the finalist team Clean Gold, led by team captain Christina Schaefer. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
I'd like to start off questions. Could you tell me the current status of your patent?
Yes, it's run out. We've been marketing Clean Gold for 20 years.
How long? How long ago did it?
2017, I believe.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. If you were to be awarded a prize through this challenge, how would you deploy those funds?
Well, we've developed very efficient methods of working. And so depending on the size of the prize, I would definitely want to engage with Cincia and perhaps Senor Rivera in Peru to start utilizing the remediation aspects of Clean Gold to start proving that as being an effective and sustainable operation. Then I would also like to pick some low-hanging fruit with networked artisanal miners, and I'm thinking specifically not small-scale miners because we've done that and learned our lessons from that, but definitely with hand panners working with the most primitive tools who are now getting better networked and associated than ever before. And then developing a distributor model once we're able to penetrate and start building sales.
Okay.
Okay. Hello. The Clean Gold only work in alluvial mining, or is possible apply this technology in underground mining?
Oh, definitely.
No.
I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Sorry for jumping in. When we were working in Peru, we did alluvial mining, river mining, balsas, chupareras, and also I got to haul 30 pounds of crushed ore from Arequipa and do some preliminary work with it. So there is not a mining situation yet that we've encountered that we have not been able to adapt the method to.
And if you're familiar with hard rock mining, they use copper amalgamated plates. And this is a beautiful application of Clean Gold. You can just put a Clean Gold plate in lieu of a copper amalgamated plate, charge it with magnetite, let it run, and increase recovery and eliminate the cost of mercury and the environmental damage.
So the question that I
would like to find out, how would you involve local communities in your work to ensure long-term sustainability and also, keeping giving back to local communities?
Mm-hmm. Well, we would definitely want to choose partners on the ground that are committed to development and sustaining and doing sustainable mining. Right now, we've got COVID and coup problems going on in Mali, but one of our board members, Gavin Hilson, is networked with a woman who has an NGO that's in touch with 2 women's mining organizations. They have tens of thousands of women miners that are very well organized, network, and committed to the development of their communities from their mining. And so we can increase their yield with our smallest product, create a microfinance scheme that can allow them to start using the technology and repay it and use the added gold that they're recovering for development.
So I have to say that
Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
that So I have to say the core thing I was struggling with your application was, on the one hand, the technology seemed to have so many obvious advantages, right, over what is conventionally done today. And yet, as you said, it's been out there in the field for 20 years, right, and adoption seems to have been slow. So help me understand, right, what are the barriers, and what's your plan, and how will these resources help, I guess, change that adoption curve?
Where we have been in our field work was going into very remote areas, working with small scale miners that were caught up in mercury supply chain that we were unaware of, and other NGOs and from the United Nations to the World Bank were battling a mercury supply chain where the mercury and the gold dealers are going hand in hand. They were putting out the welcome mat until we left. And this has been the same way where other people have tried to reintroduce retorts or other technologies in the past. And so we didn't see a lot of adoption coming straight there. So there are those types of mines that have adopted us. But there's also, like I said, we want to get to where people who can use our simplest, smallest tool, we really have not tested that. And in all of these years, you'd think that we would have had an opportunity, but these people were not organized, were not on the internet. And so it was really hard to find them. And a lot of times we would be coming out of production, coming out of a field work with small scale mining, and we'd get approached by small individual, like women in Peru saying, could you please come back and show us how to use this for our riverbank mining and such like that, which we've not been able to return to, but that's definitely where our focus is going to go next.
So in terms of production, do you have any intention of being able to produce locally in some of these communities, in and around some of these communities?
To produce the clean gold product?
Yes.
If we are able to find that the facilities that are available to do it, that would be ideal. But for the needs of our supply chain, and maybe David, you can chime in on this, we have not been working in countries where they manufacture the products that we use for our specifications to produce the clean gold product.
I would add to that in addition to a simple piece of equipment, there's a set of methods that are non-intuitive. And so when we train someone to use it, they go off and enjoy the increased earnings. But oftentimes in mining, people are isolated, and so the word doesn't spread. And so you don't get word of mouth advertising, especially among men miners. One of the reasons why we're very interested in working with women's mining co-ops, because what other NGOs have indicated is that when women learn something new, they share it with their friends.
Thank you.
Very good point. Judges, any other questions?
My question initially was really trying to see how we could make it cheaper for more. That's why I asked about the local production.
Right. The most expensive thing about our equipment is shipping it and customs. And so with the Minamata Convention and national action plans being formed, I'm hoping that we will be able to engage with ministers and to reduce the customs for bringing us in. But our equipment is so inexpensive that literally it costs as much to ship it as it does. But with the miners' return on investment, it makes it worth it. I mean, our competitors are shaker tables that cost upwards of thousands of dollars and centrifuges that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the technical expertise required for that is just prohibitive to anyone but larger scale mining operations.
And even then, we've visited mines in Suriname and 2 mines in Suriname where they had fluidized bed centrifuges on site. And I pointed to them and said, why aren't you using this? Oh, actually, one was in Africa also. And they said, we don't have clean enough water. And one of the selling points of Clean Gold is it uses less water than any other method, and it can use dirty water. It doesn't matter if the water is silted.
Okay. Thank you, Clean Gold. That's all the time we have for questions and answers, and that brings us to the end of this part of the program. We judges are going to deliberate now offline and determine the prize-winning teams. The prize-winning teams will be announced tomorrow live, so be sure to tune in to the awards ceremony tomorrow. But don't go away just yet. Up next, you'll hear from Sandra Averous from the Global Mercury Partnership, followed by some closing messages from Conservation X Labs. Thank you again to all the finalists, and thank you for tuning in.
Next, we will hear from Sandra Averous about facilitating innovation through partnerships and collaboration. Sandra is the Program Officer at the United Nations Environment Program, in charge of the Secretariat of the Global Mercury Partnership. She also leads work on chemicals in products, chemicals in plastics, as well as sustainable and green chemistry in the chemicals and health branch. She has worked for the past 10 years on sustainable consumption and production at the UN Environment Program. Please welcome Sandra Averous.
It is a sincere pleasure to address you today. It's refreshing to hear about innovations and brilliant ideas and how they can have a significant impact on preserving our environment and contributing to sustainable development. UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme, is committed to protect our environment, and in the context of artisanal small-scale mining, UNEP has been engaged for a long time on protecting human and environment from mercury. You heard my colleague from the Minamata Convention Secretariat earlier today. As host of the Global Mercury Partnership, UNEP has been engaged since its creation in 2005. The Global Mercury Partnership focuses on 8 partnership areas, one of which is ASGM. I would like to pass on 3 messages today. First, one cannot succeed alone. This is the spirit of the Global Mercury Partnership, a voluntary multi-stakeholder partnership with over 190 stakeholders, focusing on supporting countries for timely and effective implementation of the Minamata Convention, focusing on providing state-of-the-art knowledge and science on mercury, and delivering outreach and awareness raising towards global action for mercury. Some of the innovators today are already partners, and you are welcome to request to become part of such network. You are an important piece of the puzzle, and cooperation is essential to succeed in reaching the partnership goal, protecting human health and the environment from the release of mercury. Innovation and partnership are essential in finding systemic solutions to such complex and long-standing problems as making ASGM sustainable environmentally, socially, and economically. My second point is on a program supporting developing countries. The Planet Gold program is a $45 million GEF-funded initiative led by UNEP that helps countries implement the Minamata Convention, in particular their obligation to reduce and where feasible eliminate mercury use in ASGM. Planet Gold is working in 9 countries to make small-scale gold mining safer, cleaner, and more profitable. Its vision is a clean, global supply of gold from small-scale miners. Planet Gold focuses on 4 knowledge areas: technical solutions, formalization, access to finance, and awareness raising. Looking at the finalists of the ASM Grand Challenge, they all have the potential to contribute to one or more of these knowledge areas and to contribute to the global effort to support artisanal miners and their communities while protecting human health and the environment. Finally, my third message is on gender. A gender perspective is essential and should be embedded in all work in ASM. Women's work is often undervalued, while they, sometimes unfortunately with children, represent roughly a third of the ASGM task force workforce. In some countries, women working in ASGM have been found to earn 60% less than men for the same work, or to be allowed only to work on tasks that provide them with less than the minimum wage. To assist governments with ensuring equal opportunities for men and women in the ASGM sector, UNEP has developed a guide on incorporating gender dimension into national strategy setting in the context of chemical management, which contains guidance on gender in policy planning, in particular for the National Action Plan for Artisanal Small-Scale Gold Mining as required by the Minamata Convention. Overcoming the barrier to mainstreaming gender into ASM is possible using a variety of approaches, such as collective action, promotion of a female mining cooperative, such as providing services and resources, for instance, the creation and provision of financial products, especially for female ASGM. And finally, designing and implementing intervention and policies with a gender perspective. As a conclusion, we have been dealing with ASGM long enough to know that there is no silver bullet technology waiting to be discovered which will replace mercury. The solutions are incremental, interdependent, and in many cases employ low-tech practices in creative ways. It is promising to see that the finalists of the ASM Grand Challenge represent a diversity of solutions, from test monitoring to extract and data gathering. It will take innovations such as these, plus political will and resources, to really make a difference. Congratulations again to the organizers, and looking forward to hearing from the remaining finalists. Thank you very much.
The scale of the problem that unregulated artisanal mining poses is really clear.
If you don't stop this now, we're going to have millions more hectares polluted and thousands more lives seriously disrupted.
If you don't know it, you can't manage it. You can't then mitigate the impact of it.
There's a huge potential for responsible mining, responsible supply chain.
It could potentially impact over 40 million people all over the world.
If we can work as an entire sector, if we can just absolutely get rid of mercury use, that would be a huge boon for the environment and for people.
But we cannot do it alone. Each competitor cannot do it alone. So
by getting all of us together at the same table and being able to talk these things out, we can address problems before they occur.
It's astounding. It's a great opportunity for bringing out new innovations in the world.
You're willing to take all kinds of sacrifices, other sacrifices, to get to do work that has this impact.
When you really are working for a greater purpose, I think you really bring out the best in what people have to offer.
I want to do something that I can look back at and say, I helped 10,000 people that I helped, improve their trajectory in life, even just a little bit.
It's fulfilling to be on this journey. Okay, you were in the semi-final, you are now in the final. We can be amongst the winners. I mean, that would be a fulfillment, a life fulfillment,
We'd be over the moon because it would really validate, what we're trying to do.
This is an awesome opportunity. I mean, just making the finals meant a lot.
It's great because I've dedicated my life to doing it. It's like all I do.
Probably I can even go and show it to my community members. Hey, see, my dream with your support has materialized,
It would be wonderful because we need it. We definitely need it because the world needs it.
Oh, wow. This has been fantastic. Thanks to everyone for joining us today.
You can find out more information on our website, artisanalminingchallenge.com, to learn about each finalist team and their innovations.
Please join us tomorrow when we announce the winners of the Artisanal and Small Scale Mining Grand Challenge. And we've got a special announcement about the future of the challenge in store.
See you tomorrow.